Okay, so today I'm going to be telling you guys a little bit about allergies in dogs, but specifically in my dog. So I brought her with me today. It's Holly. She's a 10-year-old spayed Shih Tzu. She'll be 10 in November. She actually had a really difficult birth, and so her ribcage kind of got smashed, and she wasn't supposed to survive past birth, which is how we kind of ended up with her. We were told she would have a lot of medical issues and things like that, so we ended up being the ones that were willing to take her in. She is a brachycephalic breed, so she has difficulty breathing, which is why you can kind of see her from our short walk here. She's already kind of dead. She started having problems with allergies around 2 or 3 years old, and we're still kind of working to get them under control. So in terms of like what an allergy actually is, how it works is that the body gets exposed to an allergen at first, and it sees it as some sort of pathogen that's not good for the body. So then it creates this memory that the immune system has against it, and it gets exposed a second time, and your immune system kind of overreacts, and it has antibodies against just kind of what's not actually technically harmful to the body, so it's kind of an overreaction. Then your mast cells in your body kind of get notified that there's this pathogen, which is actually just an allergen in the body, and they release histamines, and those are kind of what give you your symptoms of the inflammation, the redness, the swelling, itching, all that kind of stuff. Which is why typically when people have allergies, they take antihistamines because it helps kind of regulate those symptoms. And then sometimes if you get exposed to that same pathogen or allergen repeated instances, then you can have an increased response with time. And this is Holly not caring about her allergies and playing in leaves. So this is kind of a picture depiction of what happens. So like I said, kind of the antigen, which is actually just an allergen in this case, attaches to your mast cell and gets activated, and then it degranulates, releasing all these histamines, which is what, in addition to a bunch of other chemicals, gives you that allergic response. So they kind of base your allergies in different types. They can be divided based off of what the allergen is. So they have like flea allergies, food allergies, things like that. They also divide them up based off of the root. So if you're inhaling it, like Holly is here, and that's one type of route, or skin irritations by touching it, or if you ingest it in food. They also base off of the time it takes for your reaction to start. So if it's an immediate reaction, like if you go into anaphylactic shock, that's one type of reaction versus a delayed reaction if you have later symptoms that come. Then they also divide them based off of the clinical signs, whether you have kind of dermatitis where the skin gets irritated, or versus bronchitis where your lung capacity gets irritated. And then they also have the inherited forms with the HP and the seasonal. So how to spot an allergic reaction? So there's a lot of different symptoms, and it kind of just depends on the dog specifically. So typically you'll have some sort of skin irritation or itching that can be local to one spot, or it can be widespread throughout the whole body. That you'll notice excessive licking, which is kind of a way that they try to soothe that itching and irritation. You'll see redness and swelling either in specific locations, or again, you can have multiple hives all over the body with bumps and hives. You can have respiratory issues like coughing, sneezing, wheezing, other things like that. You can also see discharge from the nose, eyes, and ears, and sometimes you can see digestive issues like the vomiting and diarrhea. So with Holly specifically, when she started being a couple years old, we noticed she kind of had very chronic ear infections, and so every time we would go in, our vets would be like, we had to do this entire drainage, we had to clean out her ears, we had to pluck hair, we had to do like a bunch of stuff to get all of this nasty gunk out of her, and so basically every time we went to the vet, she had an ear infection. And that's kind of how we started realizing that she had the food allergies. We started cleaning her ears regularly. We started doing all the things with that. But then she started having other symptoms. She would start kind of biting and itching at herself. Holly, come here. If you look, what we were told to kind of look for, if you look around her face, you can see where it's kind of pinkish, reddish, and also on her paws, by kind of her dew claws mostly. That pink-red color is a reaction of her fur with her saliva, and so that's how we could tell she'd been licking herself, even if we didn't physically see her licking herself. So we were told to kind of watch out for those areas, which are a lot of times around the hip area, on the paws, especially with her dew claws, around her mouth, places like that. And so then after that, once we started noticing she started itching all the time, she would butt scoot all the time, she would bite herself raw on her back end, she would rip out her fur, all that kind of stuff, so it kind of just progressively got worse, and so then we had to do more than just kind of clean her ears. But so we kind of saw almost all of these with her throughout the different times of developing her allergy. So this is kind of an example. This kind of shows the areas where you're supposed to look for this kind of irritation, licking, redness, swelling. These are the typical areas where you would see either discoloration on her skin or in her fur from her saliva, or any sort of irritation like ripping out your fur, kind of getting it rubbed raw, all that kind of stuff. And then this is an example of decently severe dermatitis in a dog. So this is where kind of like the hair is falling off. They're picking up themselves. You can see kind of the scabbing and the redness all over themselves. So kind of a real life example, and then where you should kind of be looking for them issues to start. So in terms of managing the symptoms, they do it depending on the type of allergy. So prevention is a really big one. So like with fleas, if your dog has a flea allergy, using monthly preventatives and staying up to date on those is really important to prevent them from having that. Or food allergies, which is one of the ones Holly has, they prevent it by like not letting them have any type of food. So you start out by switching them to like a different type of diet and trying to figure out kind of what they're allergic to, but then at the end, whenever you need a complete reset, we start them on the ZD diet, which is a veterinary clinically like designed diet that has proteins that are so small the body doesn't recognize them as allergens. So that's what she's currently on. She's been on it for a couple years now. It's the only thing we can kind of find that really helps and works for her. So she, in particular, has prevention of that, but the issue is, like, I have 2 little nephews who like to throw food to the dog, and so, like, anytime she comes into contact with those, it kind of completely defeats the purpose. So we were told when we started her on it to completely bleach and clean out all of her toys to get rid of any food on the floor and to kind of keep her away from any sort of contact with any sort of food, toy, stick, whatever, that had come from anything else that could have touched a potential allergen. In terms of immediate relief and short-term relief, they'll give steroids and antihistamines. If your dog is kind of already having symptoms and it needs to be treated right then they'll give them those types of things. Holly in particular has been on Zyrtec multiple times. Antibiotics, they only do if there's secondary infections. So a lot of times with flea allergies, when they get rubbed open and rubbed raw, they'll get secondary infections in their skin, and then they would need to prescribe antibiotics to help get rid of that secondary infection. Shampoo is also really good for skin relief. If your dog has irritations with skin, they make different types of shampoos. A lot of times they'll have like oatmeal, aloe vera, different things like that in it. They also make lotions, sprays, all that kind of stuff. And then outside of that, there's also desensitization injections, which is kind of like in human injections, where if you expose your body to small amounts of it and slowly increase those, you can have less of a response with time. So it's supposed to kind of help get rid of the allergies, which she has not been on. So for us, like I said, we started out cleaning her ears regularly. We got her a bunch of different shampoos between, buying oatmeal shampoos, getting Jackson Daisy online, getting prescription shampoos, all that kind of stuff, or whenever we go to the groomers, getting the allergy-specific hypoallergenic shampoos and things like that. Trying odd foods. We put her on a bunch of different diets to see, but now we're just kind of settled on the ZD diet, and that's what she gets for her food and for her treats. She's been on Zyrtec multiple times. We tried Apical Tablets, which is kind of a newer thing that came out. It's a tablet that you take that specifically targets cytokines that cause itching and inflammation, which are kind of like histamines but aren't quite the same. And it's supposed to give relief in 4 hours, give you the itch control in 24, and have long-term reductions. So we tried her on that for a little bit, but my family is not very animal friendly, so they did not like the idea of giving her a pill every day when I was not home. So she did not last very long on that, and it wasn't super effective for her. So then our vet recommended the Cytopoint injections, where they go into the clinic and get these injections. So like for me, like my parents didn't have to do anything. They could just take her in once a month or every 2 months and kind of get that injection whenever she started showing symptoms. And then it would give you that kind of more long-term relief and have less of an impact on them day to day. So that's what she's on now. So she has a combination of the Cytopoint injections and the Zyrtec and the ZD diet and the shampoos and ear cleanings. And between all of those, she does decent well. As you can see, like I said, with her fur discoloration, she's still kind of itching and biting at herself, so it's still kind of a management thing where we're trying to figure out more stuff, but she's doing pretty well. And those are my references.
Okay, let's give her a round of applause. Questions from the audience? Comments? I'll let you know.
She has food allergies.
She has a combination.
So
But
do you
yeah.
see, like, is there a specific season, like a seasonal allergy that's like worse for her, like spring or fall time?
Yeah, so typically in spring is when, the question is if we see specific seasons when she has allergies worse than others and things like that. In the spring is when we would normally notice it, which is typically when we would start her up on the Zyrtec again. And then in the fall, she loves leaves, and so she runs through the piles of leaves no matter what we do. And so those she tends to get irritated because she's just in contact with so many things. So those 2 seasons are kind of her worst seasons. During winter, she doesn't really like going outside, so she's only outside for a really short period, so she mostly just stays in the house and doesn't come in contact with a lot of seasonal allergies. And then in the summertime, it's kind of the opposite. Since she's brachycephalic, she doesn't like the hot weather either, so she also tends to stay inside.
So it's a combo of food and other environmental allergies.
Which is why we have the combo of treatments.
Yeah, okay. Other comments, questions? I've got one about the diet. What do they put in, because you made it, people miss this, I think, but you said small proteins, right? What do they do in that diet that's small? I'm just curious.
So how your body reacts to allergens is that it detects proteins in food allergies, like in food. It detects those proteins and it views those proteins as a type of pathogen that's bad for the body. And so like for her, and specifically they tried, getting rid of grain in case she was allergic to that, and then they tried doing different types of proteins. So we switched from doing chicken to like doing beef or to doing kangaroo and things like that to kind of see if any of those changed. And when none of those really helped, then they switched to ZD, because basically what they do is they take the proteins that the body would normally react to and they break it down to be so small that the body doesn't recognize them as those proteins that it would then have a reaction to. And so it's kind of not possible for her to be allergic to them because her body doesn't even know what it thinks it's allergic to is in there.
But you don't know what they start with and break down. Because it makes a good point. What is an antigen? And an antigen can be almost non-reactive in the body, or a little more, or a little more, or a little more, or a lot. And the bigger the protein, the more reactive. So I like the strategy. They're breaking down these big proteins to like, almost like peptides, little strings of amino acid, and they're going to be less reactive. So I just was wondering, do they start with something and then they chemically break it down, or is there some food source that they know of that just has small little molecules, like proteins? I'm just curious. But antigens can be very reactive in the body, or they can be so small that they're not reactive. And that's what you're getting to, so that's great. But it's a combo.
How much Zyrtec are you giving her?
So she kind of slowly got increased her Zyrtec levels as they got worse, because they started her out doing because she's so small, we did like a fourth of a tablet once a day, and it would be like a fourth of a tablet twice a day, and then it would be just like a half of a tablet once a day. So it kind of just increases as it helps and then kind of stops being effective. But now we only kind of give it to her seasonally, so we kind of just reevaluate every season and kind of restart her at the bottom and then slowly work it up until she gets better.
But she's 10 years old. I mean, so for somebody that wasn't supposed to live, that's pretty neat that you're taking care of. Okay, we'll move on. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Let's see. Then we'll go to Sam. And Sam, I'll let you find your presentation. Then you're going to use your mouse as a pointer if you need to.